New case addresses reasonable accommodation regarding disability. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Business Law 101. Albert Hayes worked as an IT systems administrator for GStek, a contractor providing services for the U.S. Army at Fort Polk. After the COVID-19 pandemic, Hayes was required to return to in-person work. He subsequently received diagnoses of autism, major depressive disorder, and social anxiety disorder. Hayes requested permission to telework as a reasonable accommodation for his disabilities. The Army, which controlled conditions for contractors at Fort Polk, determined that full-time telework was not in its best interest and denied the request. GStek allowed Hayes to telework 2 to 3 days per week. But after a mental health crisis and continued absenteeism, Hayes was terminated. Hayes pursued administrative remedies against the Army under the Federal Rehabilitation Act, but his claims were dismissed because he was not an Army employee and had not timely pursued those administrative procedures. He did not appeal that dismissal. Hayes then filed a charge of discrimination against GStek with the EEOC and, after receiving a right to sue notice, sued GStek in federal court in Louisiana, bringing claims for failure to accommodate, disability discrimination, and retaliation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's also known as the ADA. The trial court granted GStek's motion for judgment on the pleadings. That's similar to a summary judgment motion. The court found that Hayes received a reasonable accommodation, was not qualified individual under the ADA, and failed to establish a prima facie case for discrimination or retaliation. A prima facie case is one where all of the elements are established without a doubt. On appeal, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the trial court's judgment. The appeals court held that in-person attendance was an essential function of Hayes' job and telework was not a reasonable accommodation under the circumstances. Hayes was not a qualified individual because he could not perform the essential functions of his position, even with the accommodations. As a result, his claim for failure to accommodate, discrimination, and retaliation under the ADA all failed.